Welcome back to my channel. I'm Venus from Heart's Desire by Venus, and today I am going to show you something new. I am working on an Alice in Wonderland vintage junk journal, and I wanted something a little different for the cover. So what I did was I went on the YouTube, and of course you're looking around. I was trying to find a tutorial on how to make a faux wood cover. There were a lot of videos, quite a few of them, some were easy, some were hard. But some of them I didn't, it was too finicky for what I wanted. I didn't want it to be that difficult. So I did find one lady, I think it's fusmusings. I'll put a link below. Her video was by far the easiest. I turned chipboard into these. Now the light is a little harsh on them. They're a little softer tones, but to me, they look like faux wood. So I'm going to show you how I did that. Like I said, her tutorial was the best, and I'm not saying that I invented this. I tweaked her tutorial so that this would work for me. But by all means, take a look. I'll put the link below. This was way easier than I had thought. Some of the videos were just so complicated and honestly beyond my artistic talent to making it look. It was relying a lot on your paint techniques, which I am not a very good painter. So this is what I came up with after watching I don't know how many videos. So those are the big ones because I am, of course, always, like usual, I'm never making just one book in that theme. I'm always making 2 or 3. So for my project here, I'm also making a smaller junk journal, and I thought I'd show you that on screen today. See if I can zoom out. You're going to have to pardon my messy desk. I know it's horribly, horribly messy because I've been in mad scientist mode here. Oh, and there's the paper I'm using. So I'm using, the first time I did it, I just did it on chipboard to glue onto because I wasn't sure how I was going to attach it. That one I think I'm going to make a hardcover myself and mount that on. But this one is going to be a small junk journal, and I'm just using an old book cover, and I just loved the coloring on this. And that will come into play later, the backgrounds for sure. So the first step is plug in your hot glue gun. You're going to need your glue gun for this. I'm sure you could use other glue for the main part, but for the texture on it, it really is the glue gun, which I was very skeptical, but it is. So then what I did is for the first one, I cut, for these ones here, I cut a piece of chipboard exactly the same size as the cover I wanted. So you can see there's one there. And then I cut a second one. And I cut that up into the pieces. But because I've got enough pieces left over and I'm doing a smaller one, basically what I've done here is I have just cut up all my little pieces basically to fit the same size, and one for the spine. And it's just rough. Remember, you don't need it to fit exactly because we're going to cut this and we're going to make this into boards. But I had a lot of scraps, and this is perfect for all those small offcuts that we've got of chipboard and book covers and things. This is a perfect project for that. So then the next step is to cut these up so they look kind of like pieces of wood. This is where I excel. I don't have to do a straight line. I'm just cutting these up into pieces generally about the same size. So you can see I'm going to be able to lay them back down, so you kind of want to know where you're cutting it. But I'm just using a pair of heavy scissors, just cutting my chipboard randomly. Yeah. And I'm just going to place them down there for now. Yeah, not precise at all. So you're going to cut them up and then just kind of lay them so you have an idea where you are. And I'm going to do that for the last few pieces. You can, I'm sure, draw on them and make them look like perfect boards, but I'm going for that weatherboard look. So roughly kind of straight, but not really. Okay, so I'm just going to lay these back out. I do keep the ones that are kind of flatter on the edge for either end of the cover, just because that'll make it easier for us when you want to make your cover part at the end. So you can see I'm going to space these out too, because you want to be able to see you know, a little gap in between. So basically I'm just laying it out so that I know where I'm going to have to trim, because obviously you're going to have to trim a bit off of one of them to allow for your piece. So you can see here, this one's kind of tucking over my spine. That's no good. So this one I'm going to cut down a little smaller. I'm only taking off about 1/4 inch. Guess I could have held it the other way, just so it will fit. There. And this one's got a nice gap in there. I think I might flip it this way though. Yeah, you can see this one's got a bit of a gap in there, and that is perfectly fine. And then this piece, I already pre-cut this piece so that it would fit right on the spine. Oops, knock over my glue gun. And again, same thing on the side. You want to space them. So this one's a bit big, so I'm actually going to cut this one down a bit more. And you can see I'm not precise at all. I'm loving this project for that. Kind of lay it down. And keep the little offcuts, because you never know when you actually start gluing it down again later, you may decide you want to put a piece in or different. So that's what I've got. So now what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to slide this over. You're going to take your glue gun and you're just going to, it's not, oops, glue sticking out. It's not science here. I'm just sticking just a bit of glue on here to hold it in place, because there will be so many other things holding it in place. So I'm just got it right up to the edge, hold it down till it dries enough, and just pull out these little burrs. And so I'm going to do that to all these pieces, and then I'll come back and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I'm almost done gluing, but I did want to show you something here. So as I was lining them up, I got to this piece and I'm like, oh, it no longer fits. That is not a big deal. You're just going to cut it to make it fit. Okay, so don't be worried if your pre-planning doesn't seem to be working out as well as you had thought. Just go ahead and trim it. It's going to look just fine. Oh, pull that burr off. And you know, see, you just get another piece in there. It's all good. So I'm just going to glue this down. And I don't think there's going to be really any way you can make a mistake on this. So at this point, your pieces are all down. You've got the little hot glue gun strings. Don't worry about them. And don't worry about if it's seeping out in the corners here, because that's going to add to the texture we've got. So on my big one, I wasn't worried about the spine because I'm going to make a separate spine and attach it to the book. But because this is using a reclaimed book, you want to make sure that you can still open and close your book. Okay, my camera focus again here. There we go. So make sure you do that before you go any farther, because if you have to peel off your middle spine here, trim it down a bit so that you can open and close your book, now is the time before we go much farther. Okay, so once you have that done, you're going to load up your glue gun again, because here comes the fun part. Oops, I just knocked my, oh well, just knocked my glue gun thing on the floor. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. And this, trust me, it looks like wood, but you wouldn't think it. You're going to take your glue gun and you are just going to do lines, pressing it flat to the wood, and you're going to just keep squishing out the glue. This, and run it right off the side. Oh, my glue gun's not cooperating. There we go. Run it right off the side of your book because you want to get this texture. And you're going to do this back and forth. And you've got a little time to play before it sets on all of these boards here. This is giving you your texture. And again, run it right off because you don't want it to look like you've done this. You want it to feel like this is the grain of the wood all the way. And yep, it's going to be a little messy, but it'll be fine. And you're going to do that all the way down. And yeah, it does use a few glue sticks, but it'll be worth it. And if you got a few big blobs, as you could probably, sticking to the page, probably can see, that came off. We're just going to glue that back down. It's okay. The big globs are going to look like knots in your wood when you're done. So we're going to just keep doing it back and forth. I mean, I suppose you could draw this on to look like knots and things, but I like this technique. Just nice and messy. Okay. So that is done. Now you can see I've got a few pieces cooking off. No big deal. Little strings hanging around, that's okay too. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let this harden up, and I'll get my stuff and we will move on to the next stage. Okay, so my boards are dry, cooled down. What you're going to need next, now on the video that I watched with, I'm just going to flash her name here again because I cannot say that right. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. When I watched her video, she used tissue paper for the next step. I modified this a bit because of two reasons. I am using, you know, the white piece on your napkins when you peel them off, and we're doing the decoupage with the top layer of napkin art. I'm using the middle pieces in there instead. Those two white pieces I usually probably throw out or whatever. I'm using those for a couple reasons. A, because I have a whole bunch of them, but B, if you look at it, it's kind of hard to see in the light, but you can see it's got a grain going through the napkins lots of times, and I liked that added texture onto this project. So all I'm doing though is I'm making sure that the grain is following the grain I'm trying to create on my wood. So as you can see, one napkin works perfect for this. So I'm just going to set that aside, but that's what you can do with these. So Ken, we're reusing, we're good to go. The next step is you're going to need some white glue, tacky glue, whatever kind of white glue you've got. That's easy to spread. That's going to give you a little bit of time to work with it. I'm using a wider brush. I'm finding this works best. I did do some experiments with that, and this is what I find works best. So what I'm going to do is I'm using Eileen's tacky glue because I've got it. I think on the first one I used the kids school glue, white Elmer's, whatever you've got, because it's not that important on this stage. Oh, I still got some in the small bottle. I'll use that. It's not really important for that part. This is just to stick this tissue paper on, and all I'm doing is generally squirting it on, working in sections though, and you're just going to spread it and try and get it into the cracks, and you're just going to cover this whole chipboard. And I'm pretty generous. You're going to cover over all that hot glue because you're going to lay this tissue over. So get right in the cracks too, because you do want it to go in between there, cover up some of that book board. But this is also why I use this lighter colored book, so that if it shows a bit, I'm going to use that to my advantage for my coloring of my wood. And this is why I say use a craft glue or something that will give you a little bit of dry time, a leeway on that, so that you can get this brushed in here and you're not panicking and you're getting in a good coverage. And that's also why I wasn't too worried about using my hot glue to stick down this chipboard, because again, you can see we're going to glue a cover basically over top of this. So it is going to get plenty of coverage. And make sure you get right to the ends, because you're going to kind of wrap any extra around to the other side just to give it a finished edge on that. Okay, so I am going to glue the rest of this. I don't think you need me to show you how to glue the rest of it. So glue it all and then I will be back. Okay, so you can see I've glued it. Got glue spread everywhere, and I'm not being like thin with it, cheap with it. I'm being generous. Get it all in there. Make sure it's all good in the cracks. And then what you're going to do is make sure your grain on your napkin's going the right way. And basically what I did is I laid it down, and you're just going to brush this right on with that glue. You're just decoupaging basically. But my first step is just brush it on gently everywhere. And if you get the wrinkles in it, that's a-okay too, because that's going to just add to this. So I'm just getting it in. But don't push down in the cracks yet. Okay, we'll come back to that part. So you can see I've wrinkled the page here a little bit just because I'm brushing it up. No big deal. And if it's not sticking too well, just put some more glue on top. A-okay. And you see my piece here is just coming off the edge. So that's all right too. Just brush it on. And then brush on the edges, like all around the edges. Make sure you get it there. You can see like I've got lots of wrinkles in here. I think that just adds to this. Or at least I'm sticking to that story. And if you tear your napkin, that's okay too. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. This is really a kind of just go with the flow thing. So what I do now is anything that's hanging over the edge, I'm going to try and show you this. I'm just brushing it over the edge. Okay, we are going to paint the edges. Let's see if I can zoom in there. So you're just gonna, and I just kind of fold them over and make sure you just paint them in good. We can trim it from the other side after. That's not a big deal, but you just want to kind of get it so there's a bit of a wrap around. Okay. And yes, you're probably going to have glue everywhere. Okay. So I'm not going to trim too much yet because I don't want to flip it over because it's still tacky on the side. So I'm just ripping any of the obviously huge chunks off. And then once we're done this part and this is dry, we can flip it over to the other side and finish that part. That's not a big deal. But as you can see already, you're kind of getting that grain of the wood and it's starting to look like boards. So before this fully dries, what I did is I took my brush. It's a little stiff now because we've had the glue on it. This is perfect. You're going to just get in those cracks, just pushing it down, and you may tear some of the paper, and that's okay because you can see it's just showing, and I'm just really kind of just jamming it down in there. But I'm also, what I'm trying to do, you can also use your bone folder here, is just get it down in that crack, and you've got to just kind of push it down in there. Because when your paper tears a little bit, it's going to make the edge of the planks there look a little rough. It's going to add a little bit of texture, which I found it made it look a little bit more like wood that's been split as opposed to, you know, the cut that we did. And same thing on the spine. And you're just pushing it down and then brushing it in, I find just adds to it. And you know, it's probably really hard to see on the camera here, but trust me, you're just going to play with it. And if you don't like the Prussian, then don't do that. But to me, I found this just added a little bit of depth on there. It really made your layers of your chipboard pop up so that it looked more like wood. And I'm just going to... And of course, some of those we have the bigger gaps, so you don't want the tissue paper to be over it like a bubble when it dries, because it's eventually going to get broken. We want it pressed down in there And of course your brush is still goopy. If you find it you're tearing too much, you can just add a little bit more glue onto your brush and use that to brush it in. Because we are going for texture on this, so don't be shy. Okay, so now that that's good, I'm going to go and put my brush in there. I'm going to go dry this, and then I will come back and we will work on the next steps. Okay, so I'm back. My cover is dry, so we're going to address the edges here. So this one's not so bad. I got it wrapped over. This one, not so much. So what we're going to do is we're going to work from the back side. And again, you're just going to use your craft glue again, or whatever white tacky glue you used for the front. And basically, you're just going to decoupage. If I can get it to come out. Come on. All the edge over. That's all I'm doing. So I'm going to use my paintbrush again, spread it around, and then I'm just going to fold it over, spread it on. Because you know what, on this side, we tend to have something on here butting right up against the cover anyways. So I'm just folding it over, generous with the glue. You can see I'm a little stingy here. I got to get more in. And just make sure it's pressed crisp up on your edge and just fold it all over. And I'm not doing anything fancy for the corners. I'm just folding it over. It doesn't really matter much. So I'm just going to kind of do that all the way around. Okay. And just work it till it lays kind of flat. Because the glue will dry over here on the side. It's not a big deal. But you just want to make sure you're kind of getting it flat on the edge. Alright, so I mean, I guess this is just decoupage 101, but I thought I would mention it. I have not done a lot of decoupaging, so I'm sure maybe my skill set is not as good as some people's, and maybe there's a better way. If there's a better way of doing that part, let me know, but in the comments. But this is what I've kind of come up with, so, and it's working for me. Okay, so I've got it all the way glued around. So again, I'm going to take this back to my heat gun, and I'm just going to dry this all up, and then we will come back and work on the actual cover again on the other side. All right. Alright, I'm back. So my cover is dry on both sides. This would be a good time if you're like me and a messy painter. Put down a piece of paper, protect your surface, because we are going to paint this. So on my originals here, I was going for a darker wood finish. So I did my base in black, which is showing in the cracks here darker than everything else. I did that black, but this one I want to be more like aged, washed out board. Hence the reason I started with a base that's lighter. On the other one I started with a base of black chipboard, and then I painted black over top. This one I want to be a little lighter. So what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to start off with my darkest color that I want, which will be for in your cracks here a lot, and then you lighten as you keep going with each layer. So I've got my paint thing here. For those of you who've been following me, this is the chunk left over from my milk jug mini journal. The little curved bottom pieces works perfectly for holding my paints, that's for sure. So I'm going to start mixing just a few browns on here and just play with the color that you want. I always like to just mix a little bit extra as well, because you don't want to kind of adjust too much on your coloring, because I don't know about you, but I never get it quite matched up again. And I'm going to add a little bit of white, because like I said, I'm going for a lighter color. You can see I'm almost out of paint. I've been painting everything. I'll just use one of my paint brushes here to get out some paint. And again, I just want it a little bit of a lighter color to start. It's not science here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple brushes of water to thin this out, because you don't need this to go on thick. Ugh, paint blobs. So the water will help, plus that'll help get it into the cracks here. Stuff out of the way. And all you're going to do is you're going to just do, I start by going over the cracks and getting it right down in there. And you're just going to work it in the cracks. And that's where, when you pushed all those down, you really want to get right in there. So a stiffer brush is what I'm using as opposed to a soft tip one. And I'm just working it in there. Okay, so I'm going to work this into all the cracks, and then I will come back on screen and show you what I've done. Okay, so now that I've painted all the cracks, I've also painted the edges as well, just to get it out, because on the boards tends to be a little darker on the edges. So then to my palette, what I did is I added more white to that initial color and a little bit more water to lighten it down. So then the next step is a little lighter, because the wood is supposed to be darker in some spots and lighter in the others. So I just used that. And now I'm just going to go with the grain and just lightly brush. And this is where a bigger brush works really well for this. And I'm just going to lightly whitewash, I guess, essentially, right over. Not going into those cracks, though, because we want to kind of keep those lighter. But right up to the edge. And we're just going to do this all the way over, and you can see it's now picking up the grain that we have made with the hot glue, the wrinkled tissue paper in there, all that. And you're just going to lightly brush it till you get it to the kind of coloring that you want. The other reason I didn't dry this, I know some of you are probably thinking, why didn't you dry it between each layers? Because I kind of want it to blend together and not be so choppy in color. So you're just going to kind of whitewash over with this color. And again, just keeping with the grain though, because that way if you brush strokes show up, it looks like it's part of the grain as well. And we're just going to do that, trying to cover up a lot of that white tissue. And hitting all the high spots on here. And just trying to even out the dark edges so it kind of blends with the new lighter stuff. Okay, I think I got the coverage that I want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go dry this. This is the stage where I dry it so that I can get a good look as to how it's going to be dry and where I'm going to do the highlights after this. Okay, so I will be back after I've dried this. Okay, so it is all dry, and now you can see I've got some white low lights of the bleached boards. I've got the darker middles in here in between, and you can really see the grain starting to come out. So now for the next step, what I did is I took that original brown before I mixed it with the white. I'm taking a large bristle brush and I am just dabbing it in, and I'm wiping off a lot of that dark paint. And I am just going to go actually across the grain now and brush it on all that hot glue and crinkled paper that we did, just ever so slightly. Dry brushing it on, because now you can see, especially right here, it's starting to show up. And do it to the amount that you want, but it is starting to pick up all the high points. And now you can really see the grain of the wood coming in. And I just work this, and I work the edge here and the top so you can see. and then the edges between the boards, because now you can see it starts to take shape. And I do this all the way through the whole thing, just picking up. Really trying to get all those high points in here. I'm sure there's some painting technique for this that's called, but I don't know. I just kind of figured. And it also is dulling some of those white spots, you know, darkening them just a bit so they blend in a little bit better. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing this. Then I will come back as soon as I'm done, and I will show you how it works. Okay, so I'm back. You can see I have done all around, and I've picked up the grain, or the faux grain here, of the wood. And I think it's turning out exactly how I want. You can see how, depending on what colors you used, these were the lighter ones. These are the darker ones. I mean, you could even do a dark gray and a whitewash over all this. The possibilities are endless. Make sure, though, I still have to do it, but make sure you paint your edges here. I just use whatever leftover paint mixtures I've got, so it looks all textured. And then you can see this is perfect journal cover, faux wood journal cover. Hopefully you follow me again to see what I'm going to do with this cover. Thanks to all my new subscribers I've got. This weekend I did hit over 300 people, so thank you very much. Super glad to have some new faces, and of course I'm happy on my returning subscribers. When I do hit closer to 500, I think I will do a draw. I will get back to you a little closer to figure out what I'm going to do, just to show my appreciation for everybody. Please hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit the notification bell. I do try and get a new video out for every Thursday, but if you hit that notification bell, you'll know when I hit it. Thank you for coming out as usual. Hopefully you try this technique on your own, and let me know how it works for you. I always love to hear from everybody. Thank you, and have a great day.